Hello, everybody, and welcome to Untethered.tv. I'm your host and founder, Rob Woodbridge. You know why you come here. This is the place that you come to learn, to understand how companies, people, businesses, enterprises, entrepreneurs, anybody has brought mobile into their business, has created business out of mobile. This is where the best practices land. This is how they've done it. This is why they've done it. These are the little pieces, the little tidbits that you can take home and do it on your own with your own business, so you don't have to learn the hard way, or you can learn lessons so it's a little bit easier for you. That's what we do here at Untethered.tv each and every week. Now, I know there's probably chocolate lovers in the audience. I don't know anybody who doesn't love chocolate. But what's the business behind chocolate? I'm not talking about Cadbury and wrapping chocolate up and selling it as merchandise. I'm talking about the business behind chocolate, about finding great chocolate, about documenting great chocolate, about bringing that to you, to the average consumer. And that's what we're going to talk about from a mobile perspective. We featured this company on an episode of This Week in Location-based marketing a while ago. The company is called Choco-Locate Media. And I have with me today who is the producer and president of that company, and also a Toronto-based filmmaker and transmedia producer, Lalita Krishna. Lalita, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, we featured you a while ago. I'm just going to pull up your website just as a frame of reference here, because we featured you on This Week in Location-based marketing a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, the response was very good. I knew I had to get you on to talk about what you're doing in the mobile space, but as well to talk about how you did a documentary on chocolate called Semi-Sweet, and then you translated that you complemented that with a mobile app, which is an app that is, I'll get you to describe in a second, which is an app which is a directory of great chocolate in local cities, so very local. But at the very beginning, before we get into all that kind of stuff, talk about your background. This is your first app that you've made, and is this how did you get here as running this company called Choco-Locate?
So just a little background on myself. I am a filmmaker. I've worked in television. Before that, I worked in advertising. And after television, I moved to set up my own company, and I started producing documentaries. And when I was, you know, the whole television landscape is changing. People are now getting their content on different screens. They watch it online, they watch mobile, you know. So as producers, we have to adapt and change with the times. I mean, we are hit, just like the music industry or any other industry has been hit by the fact that, you know, the audience is fragmented. We have also been hit. So I started moving into the online space 3 or 4 years ago, where we first created a web-based series with a lot of transmedia content for kids. It was called Breakout, and it's about activism. And, you know, I just loved the idea of doing something which changes and evolves, because typically when we do a film, I mean, I still love film, don't get me wrong, but when I make a film, we produced it, we release it, it's a complete piece. But with the online space, I can keep updating, changing, you know, and it evolves with the times. And the other part of it, which I find so attractive, is the interactivity. We actually communicate with our audience, our users. We're able to link, you know, connect with them and respond in a, you know, just-in-time kind of framework. And so that ensures that we're always, you know, responding to what their needs are. So it is, if somebody doesn't like something, they can tell me and we can adapt and change. So I just love that space. So when it came to this documentary, so typically the way we work is, when it comes to a documentary, mine are television based. So I had this idea of doing something on chocolate. It came from the whole issue of fair trade and, you know, fair usage. And I thought, you know, I'm working with a product that's so commercial, that's chocolate. I have to also be able to use some other components to be able to make this relevant to the user and to the audience, so that they can watch the documentary, but also do something after that. What kind of action can they take? So it seemed logical for me to create some transmedia extensions.
So you know, I love that, because it's true. You know, I I've interviewed a couple of people, and we've done a couple of episodes around marrying documentaries or films and apps, and you know, the film industry, the commercial film industry has adapted to this very early. I mean, so you've got a Batman franchise and then a Batman game on a mobile device, and it seems to go. You know, you go through this trough of despair that happens, which is, you know, the day that the movie is released, you get thousands or millions of downloads, and the next day you get zero. So it is a little bit about deeper engagement and making sure that the message continues from the time they're finished that film, in the case of you know, SemiSuite, and then how do they translate that into usage on the mobile app? Was it a hard thing to wrap your head around when you were building this out, or was it just so natural? You said, it's got to be an app.
No, actually, it wasn't, because I mean, first of all, I have to say, I mean, I know you started off by saying everybody loves chocolate. I didn't start out doing this project because I love chocolate. I mean, I like chocolate, but I'm not a chocoholic like many of the people that I've met are. I started this project because I wanted to raise some issues about chocolate. I wanted to build consumer awareness about chocolate and fair trade and sustainability and all of those issues. And to me, when I was thinking about the transmedia space, I thought about, we'd create a website, you know, and we would tell stories, and we would let people share their stories. What's your grandma's favorite recipe? And that's the way we started out. And then we did a focus group. We brought in a whole bunch of people who love chocolate, people who use, you know, websites, mobile apps, you know, all kinds of different devices that they get their content from. And we brought them together in a room. And you know, it was funny because we went through a list of questions. We sort of started drafting up people's persona, when they view what they use. And people said, you know, your ideas for the website are they're interesting. Sure, you know, I'd like to know how many books there are about chocolate. But when it comes to chocolate, just tell me where I can find it. That's all I care about. Where can I get it?
I don't care about the history. I don't care about anything. I just want to eat it.
I want to eat it. That's it. And
was that shocking to you, or was that shocking to you, or was that something that you kind of anticipated that you would get?
No, I didn't anticipate that, because, as I said, we were going to do a website, and you know, I thought about how creative. That was the purpose of bringing this user group together, was to figure out how can we respond to their needs and create an exciting, you know, interactive website. And so when it comes to location, I mean, obviously a device for location is mobile. So that's how we moved to the app space and said, well, if we are going to help people find chocolate, well, we've got to go mobile. And that's how it happened.
All right, I'm going to take us back to a second. Right when you were describing your transition from filmmaker and television producer and into this kind of transmedia world, you said that the industry has taken a hit, and we all kind of assume that it's taken a hit. But my guess is that there's a lot more underneath that, where you've got big impact when it comes to you know, how this industry has really taken a hit when it comes to things like you know, ability to generate revenue, your income, I guess the appetite for funding these things. Is that all kind of declined, and has it shifted over into this space, this digital mobile space?
There is definitely a push from the funders, and our public funders, primarily the Canadian Media Fund, which, you know, under Telefilm Canada, there is a push and this thrust. And in Canada, we've been actually kind of fortunate, because our in some ways the funders have kind of pushed the producers and pushed us in this direction. So if producers like myself, we go for public funds, we have to have transmedia components attached to, you know, our television properties. So there is a big push, and you know, there are some questions about that. Certain projects lend themselves to the transmedia space, some don't. So I think, I mean, the jury's out there, and we can tell by the success of some. You know, you mentioned commercial projects, like, you know, obviously big feature films with a big fan base, and you know, you want to know what the stars are doing, or even a series where there's an ongoing engagement with the stars or the actors. But with a documentary, it's difficult, because a documentary is a one-off production. You're going to watch it in the theaters or at a festival. But my contention is that your engagement with the issues covered by the documentary is ongoing. That's not going away. You might watch it one time, but it is going to stay on. And that was the whole point, and that's how I worked on my transmedia series, Breakout, because activism covers a whole range of issues, and those issues aren't going away, and we want it to be ongoing. And that it proved to be a big success in schools and education. And I felt the same way with chocolate, because to me, chocolate is where coffee was 10 years ago. And look what's happened with chocolate. With coffee. It's grown. People are now, you can find fair trade coffee everywhere you go. Even the big commercial producers make fair trade a brand, or some kind of fair trade coffee. And I think initially that awareness was actually built through documentaries.
I interviewed folks who created or produced the movie Waiting for Superman, and they had the same kind of feeling, right? And they've done a number of things. They did Al Gore's movies as well, and it was the same language that they were talking about that you're using here, which is activism, which is a way to reach a new audience beyond the film. So, do you think that your audience, who saw Semi-Sweet, are the same audience that are using the app, or are you exposing it to two different audiences? This whole, you're basically a purveyor of fine chocolates, and then you're right on the app side, and the documentary is something that kind of goes a little bit deeper into how this is developed. But are you going after two different audiences?
That's a really interesting question, because in many ways we built an audience for the documentary through our app and through the website, because the app and website have been ongoing in a beta phase almost a year before the documentary was released. And in this process, we were continuously, chatting with our audience. We've got a lot of social media up. We've got fans on Facebook, and we've got a Twitter account, and we were able to create a sense of anticipation for the documentary. And we got amazing, just unbelievable press, media coverage, and resulted in record viewership for TV Ontario, who is a provincial broadcaster, and they're thrilled because we were able to bring everything together for the big launch, on television.
That's a really. I'm just making a note here. That's a really interesting perspective, right? Because your point about the audience before this was that, listen, these big major motion pictures have an audience already. These guys are they come stoked with an audience. Like, you've got Spider-Man or Superman fans, but with you guys, it was you leveraged this technology, this mobile technology, this social media technology, to build an audience prior to actually getting the documentary out the door. Have you ever seen, in all of your experience, have you ever seen an opportunity like this where you can reach the audience and help it shape your documentary, as opposed to put out the documentary to an established waiting group of fans and then try to market the hell out of it, which is typically what happens, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's exactly what happens. And typically what happens too is that people think about doing the transmedia extensions after they've made their documentary. Right. So they'll make the film, and then they'll say, let me take all my extras, the stuff that sort of got left behind on the cutting floor, and I'll put it all on this website, or let me start building an audience base. That's changing now. People are aware that as they begin their documentary, they must start. So in the case of Semi-Sweet and Choco-Locate, we actually consciously started work on all three platforms right in January 2011. And, I had funding for my documentary. We'd done the research, we'd done our trailer, we've done everything. So we could have started at least 3 or 4 months before we actually did. But I wanted to make sure that, we had everything lined up for all three platforms. So we literally started all three platforms together. And of course, it takes a lot less time to do the website and the mobile, and plus it's a work in progress. So as I said, we keep updating and it continues. So we were able to actually do our beta launch in July of 2011, and started getting media attention almost right away, right off the bat. So we were able to tell people there's a documentary coming. So everybody was like, when's the documentary out? And then as we started our interviews and started cutting pieces together, I was able to tease people by putting a few things on the website. And, so there's a lot of engagement now with our characters, which is really unusual for a documentary.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that. A lot of times the documentary is out and then the app is submitted to the App Store and waiting. And I see this quite a lot. And it seems to be a big mistake for documentary, especially independent documentary filmmakers, that you made a good point there. Is that it's really easy to build a website and an app compared to actually creating a documentary, right? So start with the basics and start with a very beginning understanding, and then you could literally, quite literally, build an audience before and build the anticipation prior to that. And I think that's the big point here, is that these tools are available. You can actually, a tactic that I've seen very effectively is target, do a little bit of a mobile advertising, target put a little banner ad on some apps that you think is your target demographic, and then go out and advertise before and see what the response rate is and see if there's a demand for that kind of stuff. And I think that's what you're doing with this. I think it's so fascinating to build the audience before you actually launch a documentary.
Yeah, there's just one thing though, which is that, I think one has to be aware of the amount of content you need when you're talking about a website or an app, So I was really, really fortunate to be able to have the time to be able to build the database and get the amount of content and the depth to which we went, in terms of our app. It's not just a directory of listings, and it's not something that you just put out there. We waited, we took our time, we did the research, we went around, interviewed all the chocolatiers. And I think coming from, wearing my hat as a documentary filmmaker, I was able to get in depth. It wasn't just about the technology, it was about content, and it was about building that content in a manner that's engaging and that immerses the user into using the app.
Oh, okay, so I got to ask another question on this. Two questions, and then we'll finish with the documentary piece, and I want to dive into the app. So bear with us here, because it's so fascinating. I love audience development like this, and it's kind of left brain and right brain when you're talking about telling a story about chocolate in semi-sweet, and then you have to move into an analytical piece, which is documenting locations and building your database, as you said. Is that easy for you to do? Was that a difficult piece to kind of segment, take the story away and put the data in?
No, it's fascinating because as a filmmaker, when we make a film, we bring a team together, and so for me we had a different team working on the documentary and a different team working on the app, but as a storyteller and filmmaker, I brought some of those attributes to the creation of the app. So when it's a blog-based website. When you go to Choco-Locate.com, we tell stories about the chocolatiers, or a blog writer, Hilary McCarroll, who's done a lot of the writing. She narrates things from her perspective, so it engages whoever's reading it. So it's very much storytelling in a different kind of medium. And so those were some of the commonality, but I was able to also provide the overarching theme so that it's not two completely different. But at the same time, what I kept in mind was that we couldn't just take the documentary and plonk it onto the website, or just say, okay, now watch the documentary.
Why not? Why couldn't you just do that?
Because then we're not utilizing the device or the platform in an efficient manner. Who's going to, you could watch the documentary on a mobile device, but this is a documentary that's meant for the big screen. That's one way of looking at it. You can watch it because the story is a story. But the other thing is, an app, as I said, the interactivity. Where's the interactivity? If I'm going to make you sit back and just watch something, I'm not utilizing the device to its best capabilities. Yeah,
no kidding. And one of the things that I noticed in one of your previous interviews, I think it was with the National Post, you talk about the content on the app being completely different than the content on the website, right? And that's because you're adjusting it for the medium, aren't you?
Yeah, that's correct. And there were a lot of questions about this because none of us knew, me least of all, what we were getting into. We just acted intuitively, and The one thing, though, we tried very hard, and again, I have to say, really, really, really a huge, a lot of credit goes to all the people who were behind us, our funders, TV Ontario, the Bell Fund, the CMF, the Ontario Digital Media Fund. I mean, they were all, everybody was behind. They could have been questioning us in terms of, what are you doing? You've launched the app and the mobile, where's the film? But they were with us, they were watching us, and we were fortunate to get the attention, because so we realized that we are doing something which is different, but at the same time, we seem to be also responding to a need in the marketplace.
What about your learning curve throughout this whole thing? I mean, was this a challenge for you to move into this, or was this? I mean, obviously it wasn't forced, but you saw the writing on the wall. This is kind of the blended, what you call transmedia, is the way of the future, where you have different outputs and different opportunities for output like this: mobile, web, and then big screen, small screen, medium-sized screen, flat glass, whatever. How was it for you? Was this must have been a great experience?
It's a huge learning curve. And I think that's part of the fascination and attraction for me, to be learning all the time. My previous project, we produced games. And, I play the occasional game, but I'm not a huge gamer. I didn't know that whole scene at all. With this, a little more, because I'm an active user of different apps, so I had a little more awareness of the kind of apps that I would use. But I'm always conscious, even when making my films, that I don't assume that I am the end user.
Right.
I shouldn't. I'm not as I said before, that I'm not the chocoholic whom we wanted to reach. So we were aware, and we made sure that we always checked. We had a lot of focus groups, we tested at every stage, and I think that was a big part of it. And it's great, because something that I would think was fantastic and really great, they would turn around and say, not really, not so much, maybe we could do this. And that was very, very useful. So it was a huge learning curve, but if you ask me would I do it again, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way. And the important lesson that I learned is to always give yourself time, because I think we had the luxury of being able to make mistakes and go back and correct it.
Now, I mean, when you look at this, can you think of another time now going forward where you won't include a mobile piece or this kind of social interaction?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think because we've created an app which we all love, and which has been reviewed and people say it's a success. That doesn't mean that for every project we're going to create a mobile app, because, I mean, if the project warrants it, if there is, again, as I say, it's an interactive medium. If there is interaction, if people are going to be pressing buttons and reacting, but if it's a passive, project, which is basically information that's going one way, I wouldn't go with an app for that.
Yeah. All right. Okay, we're speaking with Lalita Krishna, who is the producer and president of Choco-Locate Media. Just go to choco-locate.com. You'll get all the information that you need there. I want to ask very specific questions now around the way that you've gone through this development process, because, as an early first-time app developer around this, you said you've learned a lot of lessons, and I would love to bring those out a little bit. And I think that the audience that listens to this and watches these videos would really appreciate some insight into your experiences around building this application. And what we're talking about here is some of the challenges you faced. Start from the very beginning. When you were building out the application in your head, well before, I mean, obviously as you're building out the documentary, what were your expectations leading into this? What did you hope that this app did? Did you always have a vision of it being the way that it is today?
So just to go back in terms of when, 2010 was when we engaged in a period of development not in terms of developing the app, but in, say, research and the period of R&D. And at that time, strangely enough, it's 2 years ago, the development of apps was not as developed as it is today. It wasn't that easy for me to find app developers. There were people doing a lot of apps in the retail space, but I didn't find the kind of geolocate type of apps that I was looking for. People were not referring people, they weren't jumping out at us. And we found it easier to find website developers, but it wasn't that easy to find an app developer. And the other part was when I spoke to people, I had a concern that I didn't have the knowledge, technology. I mean, like, how am I giving them information? I mean, I always go to people and say, listen, I don't understand. I'm not the technological nerd. I'm not going to talk to you in terms of the platforms or this is to be done in this way. You tell me that. It's like when I make a film, I hire a cameraman who will, sort of we discuss which camera we're going to use, but I'm not going to go there and discuss focal length and depth of field. I mean, that's why I'm hiring them, because they are experts in that area.
They know their stuff.
They should know their stuff. And so similarly, my approach to this was I need to hire the people that I'm comfortable in asking questions with and discussing and telling them what we want, and then we'll work on this together. So that was not easy. I mean, because we talked to a bunch of people, and straight away somebody said to me, oh, you should really do augmented reality. Why don't we add that component to it? And so we'd go through this whole discussion, and then somebody else said, why don't you turn this into a game? Let people find chocolate, and that'll be a whole game, and then they'll walk through. And there were a lot of ideas. I can't say they were all wrong, or maybe, they might have been better than what we did, but it wasn't what we were looking for. And the other part was the costs. I mean, when I talk to people, the range of app development, the cost ranged from $5,000 to $50,000. So I spoke to someone, and I was very frank with them, and I said, look, I really don't understand what are the factors. I understand that an app can cost $5,000 and an app can cost $50,000, but can you tell me what makes it expensive or inexpensive, or what are the features, or what am I adding? Like, it's like saying a film can cost this to this, and I understand that world. And, I met people who were not willing to share information, to people who were being arrogant and telling me, you get what you pay for. And I was like, you're not answering my question. What do I get for what I pay for?
Start with that, answer that, and then tell me, because that'll answer your question, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think that they do that? Why do you think that they obfuscate the pricing and the behind the scenes? You think that's really working with you as a partner? Like that would turn me right off and make me run the other way.
Absolutely, and it did make me run. And I had this experience a little bit when I was with my previous project, which was like, and a lot of people have gone through this, and that's why I mention it. A lot of my colleagues who come from the documentary production world was saying, we go talk to somebody and they'll say, just hand it all over to us, we'll take care of it. And it's. I said, listen, that's arrogance. I said, you don't work in that manner with anybody else. Why would you do that in this world? It was like, leave the technology to us, we'll take care of it. So that meant looking out, finding the people that one could sit down and have a conversation with. And the lesson I learned was, I don't need to be talking to an app developer and telling them what platforms they need to work on or how to build what I'm asking for. What I need to give them is the user experience. I need to tell the story. And, this was interesting because I went to pitch the app when it was still in just an idea in our heads, and we knew we wanted to do this. And I was in Washington, and I was picked for a pitching slot. And I was, really sort of nervous because I had 2 days to do this. So I quickly contacted some of the people that I'd been working with. And I said, can you please help me? Let's develop this. And can you send me some designs? What do I put up? And I have to talk for about 5 minutes, and they'll ask me questions. And how do I do this? So they came back and suggested something, and I wasn't comfortable. I mean, I'm not comfortable speaking about things that I don't totally understand. So what I did was I told a story. I actually went out. I went to the marketplace, tried to find chocolate that I wanted. I couldn't find it. So I said, well, wouldn't it be nice if I had an app which would help me locate chocolate in this city? Because I'm not familiar with this city, but if I had an app which would tell me where to find chocolate, and then within that, I want to find dark chocolate or fair trade chocolate, it'd be nice to be able to sort that. And then if I'm able to say, I'm in this neighborhood, this location, and also, if I go into the store, if you were to tell me these are the top 4 chocolates, and so I just told the story of what I wanted from the app, and we won the pitch competition
Come
because
on, that's so great.
yeah, it was just then I realized that I don't need to be going around because the people listening to me don't want to be hearing about the iOS platform versus what were you doing with something else, or is it Drupal, or on the website.
But it's true.
Because
People get so fascinated, go so stuck on technology, and it's the difference between the way that Apple markets and the way that RIM marketed, right? Which was all tech from RIM and then all experience from Apple. So that's a perfect example of a story that is when I've seen these pitches, and I've been a part of them, and I've done it before. It's the passion of the founder that they're looking at, and not the technology. The technology's second, and that's such a hard lesson for people to learn. Who cares about the tech? What is the experience that it delivers, and is that experience valuable? And that's what you figured out.
And the tech comes after.
Sure.
You make the tech work for you.
Yeah.
You don't let the tech drive the project.
So come back to those ideas, the augmented reality, the game. So you tap a whole bunch of experts, the people that you feel can answer these questions for you. They came up with some of these ideas. Brainstorming is exceptional, right? There's never a bad idea. Let's just throw everything on the table and see what sticks. But what was it about these ideas? If you had the money, would you have done them? And, if you wouldn't, what was it about these ideas that didn't feel right for you for what you were trying to do?
Well, I think this again goes back to my experience in doing the series on activism. What happened was when we did the series and we talked about issues, say sustainability or water, people watched the documentaries and then they would say, well, I mean, the next step was, well, what can I do about it? Or what should I be doing? So we wanted to be able to direct them and push them in a direction and say, this is your choice, this is your option, this is what you can do. So we created a website of resources and told people where they could. So it seemed to me, if I'm connecting the documentary with the mobile and the website, I need to have an idea of how that whole process will flow. There's no point by creating an augmented reality, another story in another device, because that's, I'm telling a different story here. It's just going to confuse people. Yeah. Whereas now the way we see it is people watch the documentary, and this has happened, consistently, is they come, and when I do the Q&As, or our director Michael Alcock does the Q&As, people will often ask, where can I go? What should we do? What's the status with the fair trade issue? And then we say, oh, well, you can go to the website. You'll find a lot of, you could go to the documentary section and you'll find this is what's going on. Or go on Facebook and, you'll find an ongoing discussion, and we are connected with all the groups who are active in this area. Or come out to an event where there might be a screening and, something else. So we are able to direct them. And most importantly, we are able to connect people to where they can find fair trade chocolate, if that's the direction they want to go, or organic, or whichever one of those categories they want to use.
It's a very it's understanding the outcome that you're trying to get to, and I love that. Is that you're not trying to tell them a second story or a third story or a fourth story. What you're trying to do is one thing and get them to that spot, right? Which is, the logical next step, and they're going to engage. And I brought up the example of Waiting for Superman. This is Participant Media out of California, and the thing that attracted to me was they had at the very end of their film, which they did it differently than you did, simply because they had an audience, right? They had an established audience, and they were being distributed through not through TVO, but through major theaters across the United States. So they had the audience, but they said, so, where do we capture people? Same thought as you, Lalita, which is, when people are finished this whole thing, how do we capture them? What do we do with them? Where do we send them? So what they did at the very end of this movie, where you were enraged, right? You were saying like, oh my God, the health or the education system in the United States is broken. I need to be able to do something about it right now. They put up a little thing at the top and said, just send a text message here, and they'll donate $25 to the school of your choice. While people are enraged, right? While they have just sat through this movie. So it really is that simple. Is what's the very next step, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And people have come to us after watching the film and said, we are so moved by the plight of these kids in West Africa
Yeah.
who are working in these cocoa fields. What can we do to help?
Yeah.
So we have not yet developed that next step, which is, connecting with an NGO or someone who would then say, because I think, in terms of, I mean, for us, it's much more about consumer awareness.
Right.
That, you take the first step. I mean, we can connect that, but it's not just the logical thing of just,
Do something.
We can all take we can all take some action to make some ethical choices.
Okay, so I mean, I you can see how this conversation can just continue down this path simply because when I look at something like this, when you take an activist approach and you're trying to help, and you're leveraging all of these tools, there are thousands and thousands of different ways you can go. And I think that sometimes that gets a little overwhelming for anybody who's trying to get into this space and use these tools. So, the simplicity of what you did, I love the fact. It's just like, we don't need an augmented reality. We don't need any of that. What we need to do is get people from here to take the very next step. And then we can worry about step C, D, E, and F, and G, and all the way to Z and beyond. But if they don't take that first step, they're not. We've lost them, haven't we? So I
love what you said about simplicity, because I think that was a big part of our challenge. Yeah. Because I think when I spoke to people, and I don't blame them. I mean, they're so excited with technology. Yeah. They want to use the new tools and play with the toys and everything. And I was like, no, pare it down. It's got to be, so we wanted to be sure that we don't complicate things just for the sake of it. I'm sure it's very exciting for some people, but it wasn't what we wanted to build. And I didn't want to complicate things because I feel it would take away from the film.
Simplicity. Remember that, folks. Simplicity. The thing that's right here in front of your nose is the thing that you should be doing. Simplicity. All right. So now you've built this app.
You know what's right in front of my nose?
What's that? Chocolate?
I'm going to tempt you now.
Oh, no, don't show me that. Chocolate. Oh. Well, I did a search when we were doing this on This Week in Location-Based Marketing, and you are in Ottawa, so it's great. So, for the first time, I love the fact that you're in Toronto. I love the fact that you're focusing in the cities around you, and so I was actually able to use it. And there was some chocolate shops, obviously in Ottawa, that are part of this database. And that's a perfect transition into really now what is you've got the documentary is out and it's up and it's done and it's continuing. But now you've got this app and this database that you're creating of fair trade chocolate and natural chocolate and so how are you marketing this thing now? All of a sudden, this is a business unto itself. How do you get awareness out for the app, and then how do you go about collecting data for the app, and then how are you going to turn that into revenue? That's what I want to focus on right now. So how are you marketing this thing?
Okay, awesome. Because it's really interesting because wearing my hat as producer, which I have all these years. I mean, I've been producing films for 17 years. Typically what we do is we make a film, we release it, we distribute it, and then we move on to the next film. I found out that in the online space, transmedia space, as I described to somebody, it's like the child that doesn't ever leave the house. It grows and grows.
Yes.
And brings home friends, and then you got to take care of all of them, which is a good space to be. I
Until
think.
They're 45. So, yes.
And so now that's exactly what we're finding is with the app. Now the film, just as you said, it had this television premiere. It's showing in festivals. It's getting its reviews. It's doing the rounds. But I don't have to baby it. It's out there. It's got its own life. But with the app, we have to feed it constantly. The website and the app have to constantly be updated and be refreshed and renewed. It's the minute we don't do that, or we've got to keep feeding our Twitter feeds, the social media stuff. It just keeps going on. Unfortunately, with a subject like chocolate, it's ongoing. It's fantastic because we just have enough material that we can keep going. And it's not huge in terms of the amount of time it takes. It's just a question of staying fresh and being updated. But in terms of marketing and revenue models, I mean, as I said, we got unprecedented press, and this carries on because it's got its ripple effect. I mean, the fact that we are speaking today is another example of that. So a few people have contacted us since. I mean, one, in terms of revenue generation, we included, after we launched, another sort of feature in the app, which is events. So these are chocolate events. So in fact, one of our chocolatiers wanted to host a chocolate and wine event. And that was a revenue generation model where people could book the event through, we linked to an Eventbrite site, and we set up the whole, we did the whole transactions for them. And they ran a very successful chocolate and wine pairing event, during Valentine's around that time. And then I thought, well, this could be something that maybe other chocolatiers, so we've got another chocolatier who wants to do one, and maybe someone in Ottawa will want to do one. But the point is that, it suddenly became one more thing which we hadn't planned on, but it's something else that we could do. We could do film screenings as events, but it's not huge in terms of revenues. It's also not time consuming because someone else does it. We're just, facilitators. The other thing which is really exciting for us now, and it's come right out of this, is people have said to us, you've done this for chocolate. Can you do this for something else? Why not? You'd reskin the app, use the same attributes, and then reskin it for, say, something else, say wine, or you might want to do it for cheese, or some kind of gourmet culinary projects or products. And that's the space we are entering into now. We're just discussing that with a couple of people, a couple of partners. And so it's a kind of, we're not selling the app, but we're really using the same, the API to reskin and then, we'll just redesign and then do it. So that's another revenue model. And
what you've built is a platform that can be brought across for similar types of things. So where there's a lot of opportunity for discovery of different types of, say, for chocolate example, for wines, you said. Any other companies approach you for anything else, or are you keeping that under the wraps?
Well, the one that approached us was when you said discovery. I mean, that's just it, because I think foodies and the whole market is just growing. People are so interested. So, for example, the tourism folks from different regions we're in conversations with them, but basically their interest is to use the app to create culinary trails, so that people would go, they would book a trail and basically visit a few stores or restaurants, or they would be able to, and they can create their own trails, or they can, and it's not that hard for us to do because we already have the back end and we just have to change a few things and do it. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. So it's just come directly out of the app, something that I wasn't anticipating.
I mean, that's serendipity like that happens because you've built a solid product that allows people to vision something a little bit deeper than what it is, right? It's like, oh, I could use that, but for this over here, or for this over here. And I love the idea of tourism because they need the help, right? A lot of these cities are who rely on tourism as their primary means of income. I think of Lake Placid, New York, for example. If you've ever been down there, there's no industry other than tourism, right? So these guys need some help to be able to draw attention to the little nuggets, the beautiful little nuggets that are in the city.
And you know what, and food and culinary tourism is such a growing trend now, because if you tell me, no matter where you go, you go to visit a place, but food becomes an important part of it. If people, if you look at all the sites that people review and go into just to find out what are good places to eat and what you discover along the way. Chocolate trails themselves are pretty big. People love doing that, and it's huge in certain places, and they're really promoting that as a tourist attraction.
One of the things that is always interesting is when you and I mean this in the kindest of ways, when you stroke somebody else's ego, right? So your database of locations to buy chocolate, you're leveraging their social good, their marketing oomph, their power, their clientele to draw attention to your app. Was that part of the thinking behind doing this as well? I saw a great article, the same one in the National Post, where you're sitting next to one of the folks that you're that are in your database, and they're saying, yeah, I love this because it draws people to my store, and there they are in the National Post thanks to your app, right? So How much of a factor is that in your marketing plan to leverage everybody else's voice?
Well, it's the community, I think, of chocolatiers have really appreciated, because a lot of them are really small
Yeah,
chocolatiers.
yeah.
Many of them just started because of their passion. They're either bakers or confectionery suppliers, and they have started making chocolate because of their passion for chocolate, and they try out different things. So they really appreciate the publicity and the marketing, because we don't charge them, obviously, and they're getting all of this profile all of a sudden. And yes, they've absolutely been very supportive. And so out of that came, with one of our chocolatiers, came this whole wine and chocolate event, because again, they saw this is a vehicle. We've already got the eyeballs, and that's, so they said, why don't we just market it through your app, which was very successful, because that event, they had to turn away people because it got sold out in no time.
That's always talk about that, is that if you provide tremendous value for your users, for your consumers, for anybody who's a part of doing, who partners with you, that's going to happen. They're going to come to you every single time, simply because you've shown in their eyes, you've contributed to their bottom line, you've generated revenue or awareness for them. So, I mean, when you talk about an audience, how big is the audience? Do you disclose numbers about how many times this app has been downloaded, accessed, those kind of things?
So in terms of numbers, I mean, when you look at the number of downloads, we don't have a huge number of downloads, because
it's niche.
We haven't actively gone out.
Yeah.
We've got about 2,000 downloads. Yeah. But if you look at it, officially we launched in June of 2012. Yeah. That's when we really went out with our marketing blitz. It went out. That's how we got all the newspapers, National Post, Toronto Star, Ottawa Citizen. I mean, we got
covered
all the major newspapers. We got we got actually all three major national papers, even though it was the film itself was launched, in Toronto, in Ontario. What's interesting is, in terms of the media publicity and coverage that we got, is that it was almost 50-50. Some people put us on or interviewed us because of the documentary, and some people did it for the app. But either way, they spoke about both, Yeah. So we were able to leverage that and harness all that attention. And a lot of, I would say more than 50, almost 75% of our downloads have come since, after that. Because before that, we were still, it was word of mouth, it was beta phase. We haven't done a huge thrust. So we are now we are talking about what it takes to actually get those downloads in the App Store. And we are told there are all kinds of strategy. So we haven't finished. We're just in the process now of pushing and doing a major thrust in terms of seeing what we can do, because we're going to leverage all of this attention that we've got, and we'll do a big push before we actually get into a next phase.
Do you think that, all those strategies that you've been talking about to create more awareness, is there anything that sticks out for you that, one of the hardest things for apps is discovery? Some say it's broken because, there are 1 million+ apps out there, and how do you get found? There are, for every one company like, Choco-Locate, there's 30 others that are doing similar things in the States or around the world, and then it's about how do you rise to the top? How do you get that awareness? And so is this a daunting task for you? Do you look at this as a challenge? How do you approach those things?
It's definitely a challenge. It's certainly, if just creating the app was a huge learning curve, this has got to be even bigger, because I'm still learning and we are still working on it. So it's definitely a huge task. I don't know whether it's daunting, because what's exciting is, we're still learning. We're also under no pressure in some ways. There isn't someone saying, listen, you've got to get 1 million downloads or anything, at this point, because we'd like to do it because we think it's a good product. There isn't, by the way, I know there are millions of apps, but there is no app for chocolate. That's
wicked. That's what you like.
Yeah, exactly. Or something that goes in depth and has this kind of this intense, in terms of how many layers and what kind of information you get. So, that I think is great, because what we've done now is we've actually introduced a bunch of other cities around the US and internationally. So every time I travel or I go somewhere, we just pick up a whole bunch of, the chocolate stores there. And it's great because now we're just doing a listing. And I think that would be another, the next level of marketing or monetizing for us would be that if we'll list your store for free, but if you want us to add pictures or get, or sort of show your top 4 favorite chocolates, there's going to be a cost attached to a premium listing. We'll do it for free in Canada, but I think we're going to moving forward internationally. That's what we plan to do. So these are some of the thoughts that are going around. I have marketing consultants working, in trying to suggest different ways to go. But I think my next push, if we are going to, I guess as a company, what we're going to decide is, are we going to put our efforts into creating another app on top of Choco-Locate, or are we going to put more efforts into pushing out Choco-Locate and giving it all we got before we move on? And my, my instinct or my heart would like me to stay first and finish Choco-Locate, because I don't think we're there yet, and I think we can do a lot more with it. So I'm thinking that I'm going to allocate resources to continue do that marketing push, definitely till the end of this year, because we've got 2 big chocolate holidays coming up. We've got Halloween and we've got Christmas. Yeah. So huge, in terms of chocolate sales. So I think we've got those opportunities. We're going to push for that, and we'll see where it goes, and then we'll talk about the reskinning simultaneously. But it's another project in itself.
All right, let's finish up here, Lalita. I got one last question, just around the surprises that you've run into, the experiences that you've had in building this out. This is a brand new space, this marriage between the documentary and mobile devices and digital media in general. As you said, transmedia, and you've labeled yourself a transmedia producer. Is there what sticks out? Some of the, what was the best thing that you did during this process, and what was the worst thing that you did during this process when it came to this? If you could answer that question, I think that it would leave the audience with something that is tangible. This is the best thing I did. This is the number one thing I would never change. This is the worst thing I did. You have examples of those?
Well, I can certainly tell you, I think the best thing we did was actually listening to doing the focus group and listening to what people want. We did not go ahead and say, this is what we want to do and move forward with it and, feel very passionately about it. And, that's the biggest lesson I've learned in terms of the whole transmedia space. Being a documentary filmmaker, what I'm doing is I'm telling a story. I narrate. I have a burning desire to create something. It's a one-way process. I create it and I show it for an audience for you to
hope
react to.
Yeah.
Enjoy, that's it. It's like creating a painting, a book, it's a one-way process. I think the biggest lesson I've learned with transmedia is that it's a two-way process. It's a chance for people to react, and they're going to tell you they don't like it right away. You'll know right away. And I think the earlier you start the dialogue, even before you start the project, you must enter into that space. In terms of the worst things I did hire a couple of people as my, what's the title I'm trying to remember, interactive producer, or whatever the hot title was at that time. It's transmedia. Before it was one was called new media, and it was called interactive media. Anyway, and I think that was because I felt not confident that I would be able to do this, and I found there were people who labeled themselves as the sort of knowledgeable because they use a few buzzwords.
There are a lot of people who think they're smart.
Yeah, and
yes.
that was a learning curve, and that was certainly it led to a bit of tension, I guess. There was a huge lesson for me to say I really need to be comfortable with and be not daunted by the task. You need to take it on and do it with confidence.
I love it. That's very honest. They are. In everything that I do and everything that, when I've sat down with well over 400 entrepreneurs in this mobile space, and the question is, what are the things? Nobody should be embarrassed or guarded around the things that they've made mistakes on, because that's exactly what lends you to the experience. The next thing that you do, especially in the space, is going to be incredible even because you have the confidence to be able to do that. And I think that that's one of the key things that comes from this.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, how do people find out more information about this? So first of all, is there a place where they can go and watch the documentary? Or I've seen a couple of clips of it. Is there a place where is it only available on TVO? Can they buy it somewhere? Let's see if we can generate some interest in this.
Thank you. Yes, they can watch it on TVO. TVO has it online, so you have to just go to TVO's docs, and you'll be able to watch it.
Great.
They can also write to us, and we will, we'll be working with the distributor to distribute the DVDs.
Okay. And and for more information about you, just send them to Choco
Lalita at choco-locate.com.
Okay. And the website is at choco-locate.com. And your app is available on the iOS, right? In the App Store? Yep.
And it's free.
And it's free. And, there's two things here. One, if you are a chocolate lover and you believe in this, and first of all, go and watch the documentary. It's called Semi-Sweet. If you're in Canada, you can go to tvo.ca and it will be available. But if not, reach out to Lalita. So go and watch that. The second thing is go download this app and go and explore the world of chocolates. Don't just go into Walmart and buy a chocolate bar. Don't buy Hershey's Kisses. Go and find out. Go and learn a little bit about chocolate. It's just like wine, right? There is a difference between what you eat that's packaged and what you eat from these stores that are featured in this app, Choco-Locate. So go and take a look at it. And if you're in the areas that this is available in, just go and do it. I love it. Choco-Locate. I'm going to zoom in on that. Just there it is right there. Choco-Locate. Look it up on the App Store. Look it up on iOS and head to Choco-Locate, choco-locate.com for more information about this. Lalita, you've been great. This has been very open, very honest. I really appreciate you spending the time with us talking about this. Very fascinating. From building an audience before you release your documentary, then to continue the conversation with that audience through a mobile world, I think is a great, it's a perfect example of transmedia and well-suited title. So I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Rob. It's been great chatting with you.
Now, listen, you guys out there, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, whether you're in your car, you're in your home, you're at the gym, you're falling asleep to this at, late at night, whatever it is, I really appreciate the fact that you spend so much time doing this. Weekly, I get great feedback. I love hearing from it. I only ask you to do two things. One is go and support Lalita and her cause. Go and check out choco-locate.com. Just go and do that right now. Second thing is a little bit more selfish. Go and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. I really appreciate that. And if you give it a 5-star rating, that would be even better. That'd be even way better. And if you're not going to, just reach out and let me know why, because I will fix it. Whatever the problem is, I will fix it, as long as it doesn't involve replacing me, right? But please do that, and I really appreciate you doing this. And we will see you guys on the next episode of Untethered.tv. Lalita, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.